Hi everyone, my name is Claudia. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about combination knitting. I feel like combination knitting, even though it's been around forever, has been getting a lot more traction on social media lately. And so many more people are exploring combination style knitting. Before we can get into combination knitting and how we do it, I'm still going to get through Western style knitting and Eastern style knitting, and how these two things are the reason why we have combination knitting. So let's get to my hands and I'll show you how to do all of that. So here is a 2x2 rib, flat. Being a Western knitter means that my stitches show the first leg here, this one, is in the front, and the leg in the back is the second leg that I encounter. So I always go in the first leg when I don't want to twist my stitches. That's the first rule. You go into the first leg that you encounter in order to not twist your stitches. It has nothing to do with is it in the front or in the back. It's the first leg. So here all my stitches are Western mounted, which means that all the first legs are the one in the front. And when I knit, I create a Western mounted stitch by bringing my yarn counterclockwise around my needle. Here, counterclockwise, and here, counterclockwise as well. This is how most people learn to knit in the Western world. Now, if I start knitting and I bring the yarn the opposite way around, so I go in the front because that's how my stitch is mounted right now, and I go the other way around. So see how I'm bringing, now it's going to be a knit stitch, which is going to be funky to do the other way because it's kind of counterintuitive, but look at those stitches here. So my stitches here on this side are kind of slanting like this a bit. And my stitches that I just made, the last 3 stitches, are slanting the other direction, which means that my first leg of my stitch is in the back, not in the front. So when we come back around, we'll have to deal with that. We'll have to figure out how to knit that. And people might say, so why would you knit the other way, in the Eastern way of wrapping stitches? Well, like you can see, for the knit stitch, it's not necessarily easier, but for the purl stitch, a lot of people feel like this motion of entering the stitch and just kind of scooping the yarn without moving the index finger is easier for them. I was about to do a Western mounted stitch here, so Eastern mount and Eastern mount. So I don't think that it would necessarily be something that English style knitters would do, but you could enter the stitch and go the opposite way, and then come forward and go the opposite way. Actually, for me as a person who's not very comfortable doing the purl stitch, doing the purl stitch English style, it's actually easier to wrap my stitch this way, which is the Eastern mount or the Eastern way. Interesting. I just learned something while I was teaching you. So what happens when you then turn your work? Because my previous row was all Western mount, I had to go inside the front leg of the stitch every single time. But what did I say earlier? I said you go into the first leg of the stitch that you encounter. So right now, the second half of my stitches here that I knitted wrapping the yarn in the eastern way. Now the first leg of my stitch is the back one. So I'm going to have to knit through the back loop of these stitches if I want them to not twist. If I were to keep knitting these stitches Eastern style, I would have to wrap the other way, but also go into the stitch from the back loop. Here, back loop and Eastern wrap. Now here, it means that my purl stitch here, you can clearly see that my first leg is this one. I have to go from the back and then do the Eastern wrap, whoops, to keep my Eastern mount. Here and here. All of this will create regular tutu ribbing. I'm not creating anything different. I'm just going in a different, using a different road to get to the same place, if it makes sense. So, here. If I were to go into the stitch from the back, which is my first leg, and then wrap the way I'm used to, then it's all good. My stitch is still not twisted underneath, but now I'm back to a Western mounted stitch, the one I'm used to. So here, if I go normally as I'm used to personally, then I'm bringing back the Western mount on my needle. Here, and then, whoops, through the back loop, knit, through the back loop, knit, through the back loop, purl, through the back loop, purl. So the reason why people love combination knitting, combination means it's a combo of both. Sorry, my yarn is getting in the way. Okay. The reason why people like combination knitting is because they like to do the knit stitch. Let me get to a knit stitch. Okay. They like to do the knit stitch continental style the same way as usual, to go pick up the yarn and bring it. But they like to do the purl like this, the opposite. So now we have two stitches that are mounted Western and two that are mounted Eastern. A lot of people have preference on how they move their yarn, and also for a lot of people it creates a smoother transition between their knits and their purls when they're doing ribbing. I personally don't see much of a difference for my own tension, but a lot of people do. So what happens when you turn around though? So you have to be conscious of the fact that the purls here are the knits here. So all your knits are now mounted with the first leg being at the back. So you have to flip that. So you have to knit through the back loop for the knits, and then you can knit through the front loops for the purls, because those were knits on the other side. And combination would mean that you would wrap the other way. So knit the knit stitches through the back loop and purl the purl stitches through the front loop, but wrapping opposite. And now we're knitting, ribbing, flat, combination style. Now, if you're knitting in the round, it's going to be different. Okay, so clearly this is a flat sample, but if I were to knit it in the round, so if I scooch all my stitches back to the tip of my needle here, I can see that all my knits are mounted this way, first leg in the front, and all my purls are mounted this way, first leg in the back. I didn't turn my work. So because I didn't turn my work, it's still the purl stitches on this side that are mounted opposite. It's always going to be the purls when I'm knitting combination in the round. I was trying to find my yarn here, and it's not here, it's here. So if I'm knitting this row, again from the front because I'm knitting in the round. Now I'm gonna have to knit the knits the regular way. And I'm gonna have to purl the pearls through the back loop in order to not twist them. Here, knit the regular way and purl the pearls through the back loop while doing the opposite wrapping method, because that's why I'm knitting combination style. Whoop, here, here, and here, here, here. So is combination purling faster than continental? It depends. For you, it might be. For me, it might not. Personally, I knit in the round a lot. So I would have to purl all my pearls through the back loop if I wanted to knit combination style. And to me, purling through the back loop is worse of a motion than doing my personal regular purl. So this, to me, going through the back of that loop, I have to think about it and I have to look at what I'm doing a lot more than having, if my purl was mounted the regular way, going through here and doing this. So really, there's no better or worse way. It is about what you like and what gives you the result that you want. If this motion gives you better ribbing, then perfect, go ahead. I encourage you to do it. So my ribbing here was all made using the regular knits and purl stitches, whereas here I've been doing a bit of combination purling, and I can't really say that I see a difference. Obviously, this is just when I'm just speaking of knits and purls. So you still have to be very careful if you're a combination knitter about all the special stitches. So a knit two together or a slip knit or a make one or a yarn over might look different for you than it looks for a Western knitter. Same thing if you're an Eastern knitter, obviously, all those things are different. If you do a knit two together as an Eastern knitter, if you do it the same way that Western knitters do, it's not going to look the same at all. So be mindful if you're changing the way you mount your stitches to always look and read your knitting to make sure you're creating what you want to create. That's it. Those are the basics for combination knitting and why we do it. Do you have any questions? Leave them in the comments. If you learned something, maybe you want to hit the subscribe button. And if you have other subject you'd like me to do a video on, please don't hesitate to share it with me. I hope you have a great day. Happy knitting. See you next time.